Hey guys, welcome to wow, oh my gosh, I can't speak today. Welcome to your contour line unit. So for this unit, we are going to be talking about how specifically the elements of art, line, and shape are going to come together to create a beautiful drawing that we are known as that we have known, excuse me, as contour line. So, just a little quick outline for you. We're just going to talk about those lines, playing with those lines, those shapes, putting them together, playing with line and shape. Also, we're going to talk about a little bit of color and then adding that color to the line and shape. And then we're going to talk about how your practices are working for you guys. So, just to start things off, obviously, we already know the elements of art. They are line, shape, color, value, form, texture, and space. And these are the tools that artists use to communicate their ideas, and viewers like us look at them to understand what we're looking at. So, like when you're thinking of this painting by Van Gogh, Self Portrait, it has a lot of wavy lines. And even if you look at the back of my classroom, there is another portrait by Van Gogh that has a lot of strict, like stout lines. So you got to try to think about how that may influence how we can see the painting versus how the painting was communicated to us. Um, so obviously they're all around us. So look around the room really quick, just really quickly. Just take a quick glance, maybe like 2 seconds. I want you to think about if you can find a curved line, if you can find two rectangles, a pair of parallel lines, and a circle. Take some time to think about it. You got time. And what I like to think about when I think of a curved line is some of the artwork I have on my windows. If you look towards my windows, kind of in the back of the room, um, you'll see all the artwork that I have up there. I like to think of those as curved lines because nothing's perfectly straight, besides maybe the edges of my what is it? Of my stained glass art, but none of them are perfectly straight. When I think of two rectangles, I personally think of my whiteboard and my little TV that I have to present my presentations for you. Pair of parallel lines. If you look up at my ceiling, you'll notice there's like these big, thick, like looks like kind of pieces of wall that are like jutting out of the ceiling. Those edges, those are those parallel lines. And then a circle. I have a couple circles. I have my fan. I have my cup, if that's there. Um, I have all the paper cups, the plastic cups that I have around me. There are so many different ways that we can find all of these across the room for you. So, we're going to talk about the different types of line, how to recognize that line and shape can be used to create an emotion, and identify and create basic shapes and forms and patterns in our art. Wow, our own art. Excuse me. Wow, I can't talk today. So, a line is a path or mark on a page. I remember I described it in my other presentation as a long, narrow mark. They can help move our eyes around the artwork. The color, shape, and texture of a line can also give us information. So if you're looking at this 3D sculpture here that is on the slideshow, it looks a little bit intimidating, right? Because it's like, why that that's kind of creepy. Why are you looking at me like that? But you'll notice it's actually made of sticks. This is completely a quote unquote natural form that is completely made of sticks, and it's used color, different textures, different sizes, different shapes to communicate that it's someone that's happy. Or there could be an underlining, there could be an underlining tone to it, to where it's not actually happy, but it's under the guise of being happy. You know what I mean? It kind of just really depends. So, kind of going back to that line, we have a bunch of different types of lines. So, when you're thinking of like some of these lines, do you have an emotion that you associate with them? Personally, with like bold lines, I like to assume like a lot of like stronger feelings, like maybe anger, maybe frustration, maybe like just not feeling good altogether. Or when it comes to like some of those fine lines, I think of like delicacy or or fragility. I think it is just like being fragile and like stuff like that. Because whether you know it or not, our minds automatically assume something with some of these lines. So like even with the crosshatch lines down at the bottom, you can still find something to associate with whether you remember it or not. It's kind of a great thing about the unconscious mind. All right. So how are we going to be using line and shape? We are going to be using contoured line drawings. So obviously contour line drawings are a little bit weird, but there is 4 main techniques that I want to go with you guys. So first things first, we are going to start by just using contour line. So on the first page of your packet, I'm actually going to pull out my packet here really quickly. On that first page of your packet, if I can open it. Doesn't like me today. Okay, so remember how I said in the other video that this is going to be your in-class practice? That is what we're doing right now. So on this second box that is labeled contour line drawing, that is where you'll be doing your very first practice. So I'm going to have you take off your shoes, or one of your shoes. Don't take off both. Please don't take off both. I don't want it to stink in here. Take off one of your shoes. Just pick a shoe. Doesn't matter which one, whatever the case may be. And I want you to really just look at your shoe. And I want you to draw the outline and some of those simple little lines. So like you can see in this picture that I have on the slide already, there's no detail. There's no crazy thing. It's literally just lines. And it's all different lines formed in different shapes and shows different textures without being anything but a line. So your goal is to draw the outline of your shoe. You can use shapes, lines, that kind of stuff. But your goal is just to capture the general shape of your shoe. I wrote the object you choose. It's just your shoe. And you want to fill in your whole page, or your whole box, excuse me. So for this one, make sure you are filling in that whole box with your shoe. It can be sideways, it can be right side up. I don't have a preference. It just needs to fill up the whole space. Now, I'm going to have you guys set a timer because I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Just pause this video for like 5 minutes. You only get 5 minutes, and then come back to this video once you are done with your contour line shoe, and then we'll talk about the next steps. All right, so you should be done with your shoe. Congrats, you just did your first contour line drawing. So now we're going to talk about cross contour. So if you're looking at your packets, once again, oops, out of frame, is going to be this bottom one right here that says cross contour drawing. We are going to be focusing on that one. So for this one, you are going to find any 3D object. Now, you're not doing a pencil, you're not doing a pen, you're not doing a paintbrush. Do something that is thick and 3D. So for example, I think I did my old bottle of Mod Podge at one point. I did a book at one point. I did some of those plastic cups that end up sitting on my tables at one point. It just needs to be a thick 3D object that you can tell has form. And with those cross contour lines, you're generally drawing the outline of your shape. However, you are also adding depth to it. And how do we add depth to it? Well, do you see some of those lines that are on some of the little like vases and pots that are on your screen right now? Those are called cross contour lines. So what you want to do with cross contour lines is you want to have them define the shape of the form so that gives it that 3D look while also being 2D and literally just made out of lines. So with my Mod Podge, let's say, I would have kind of those lines like fulfilling to the form, and I would also have lines going like this way, like circling around, kind of like that big fat pot in the corner, because you want to be able to show the 3D object and the form it has without using value, without using like different shapes. You're just defining the form. Now, I'll give you another 5 minutes to do that. Once that 5 minutes is up, then you should come back to this video. All right, so now that you've done your first 2 contours, I want to talk a little bit about shapes in art. So I know I've already been saying like all these shapes, all these different sizes, whatever the case may be, but there are 2 different types of shapes I want you guys to concern about. There are regular and irregular. So with regular shapes, lines can create the outlines of all shapes, but especially some of those regular ones, because we often see regular shapes like triangles, rectangles, and ovals and squares all over the place. I'm sure if you were to look around my room at least once, you would find at least a handful of examples there. But one of the basic types of shapes is those regular shapes, and those are just shapes that we see on our regular day-to-day basis. And I know I touched on this a little bit last time, but there is also irregular or organic shapes. those are kind of just less familiar, and they're more, like the word says, irregular. So they're kind of just almost blobby. There's some that are rounded, there's some that are symmetrical, some are asymmetrical, some are more pointed than others, some are more curved than others. It really just depends on the shape. But even you can see, like, I know that little blue thing right there is how some of you draw your clouds, which is totally okay. But that is an irregular shape because it's not a simple, straight to the point shape that you know and you can recreate like very easily. And with that being said, we are going to talk about lines and shapes in our next contour drawing. So for this one, you are going to be doing, right at the bottom here, continuous line drawing. You're going to be filling in that box. And what I want you to do is you're going to look at a classmate. It needs to be someone that either you share a table with, or it needs to be someone that you can very easily see like face to face. So if you're at a table by yourself, you can move into a group of 3 for this. Make sure people are on the same page as you so that it's not chaotic and crazy. But you just need to be able to face someone so you can see their definition, their features, their shape. And you are going to recreate your classmates. However, you cannot lift your pencil off of the paper. So you may look at your paper, you may like try to identify where your pencil is, but you cannot lift your pencil off of the paper. It must stay on the paper. That's what we mean when we say continuous line. We're talking about how your drawing is entirely just one continuous line. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. So I'm going to give you guys another 5 minutes to do that. Take a pause, go work, and then come back in 5. All right, so now that you did your continuous line, I want to talk a little bit about patterns. So patterns are made with repeated lines and shapes. So obviously in mandalas, you can see a lot of repeated shapes and lines because that's the pattern. It's supposed to be symmetrical. It's supposed to be unified. Excuse me. And so you kind of want to have that unification in there by repeating those lines and shapes. In people, we see a lot of this. So like nobody's face is perfectly symmetrical. However, when we think about the proportions of our face, we kind of think about how that comes together. So like my eyes are about the same plane as my cheekbones. My cheekbones kind of come into my cheeks, like my chin, my nose, all that kind of funky stuff. You want to think about how it all comes together into that pattern that we can recreate ourselves. Now, for this one, you are going to be doing a blind contour. It should be that top one right there. And obviously, I am not there right now. So what I'm going to have you do is pick a different classmate, completely different classmate. Cannot be the same classmate as your last one. Has to be a completely different classmate. And then you are going to, without looking at your paper, draw any lines and shapes and patterns you see. And not looking at your paper. You're only looking at your classmate. And I say you can try this no more than 3 times and fill your whole box. That's because when people tend to do a blind contour, they tend to draw really, really small. So try to fill up your whole box. If you go out of the box, that is A-okay. I encourage that actually, because I want you to get used to drawing big and feeling comfortable in your drawing. So in your blind contour box, I'm repeating this one more time, pick a classmate. Make sure you are face to face with that classmate and make sure you are not, they need to check you. You are not supposed to be looking at your paper. Nope. You can lift your pencil, you can move your pencil around, you can even take up the whole page for all I care. I need to know that you are not looking at your paper. That is what blind contour is. Take another 5 minutes, pause this video, and then come back when you are done. So now that we're kind of going back on that, we're kind of congratulations, you completed your contour line practices. Yay! So again, those were your in-class practices. Your real practice is going to be done mostly outside of class. I will give you a class day to be able to do those as well. And then I'm going to be making another video talking about your color schemes and everything, and color theory and how all that works for you, because we can't have line and shape and patterns without that color. That color really ties it in together, and it kind of helps evoke an emotion and kind of makes us feel like we know what we're doing, we know what we're talking about. So coming back to those color schemes, I'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to make another video on color theory, on the color theory presentation, and then I will let you guys get that work done. I'm sorry, I made you do it first. Never mind. So you should be at a point where you are already done with your color wheel and your color schemes on that second to last page, and just make sure you're like adding those colors in. Now, you are going to add a color scheme of your choice into one of your practice pages. That doesn't mean this. That means one of these. Any one of these you can add a color scheme into, but it just has to be one. And it doesn't have to be super detailed, it doesn't have to be super crazy, it just needs to include a color scheme in there. Otherwise, let me just make sure I'm checking. Otherwise, I'm going to make a separate video talking about your thumbnails for you. So again, if you have any questions, my email is open for you and I should be able to get reached that way. I will try to respond within the same day, but otherwise, happy drawing.